morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Unity Orlando. Our opening statement this morning is, I fairly sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm and spring forth with a mighty faith to do the things that ought to be done by me. Let's all say that together. I fairly sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm and spring forth with a mighty faith to do the things that ought to be done by me. All right, let's all close our eyes and take a nice deep breath in. And let's bring that into our center in the silence. And so it is. And now if you'd like to stand, we'll sing our joy song this morning. It is called Life to Love.
Good morning, Unity Orlando. How is everybody today? Good to see you all. Welcome. I'm Susan Francis. I'm your platform speaker today. Do we have any visitors here for the first time that want to raise their hand? Welcome. We have a welcome packet for you. Welcome, you guys. Glad you're all here, and welcome online. For those who are online, you can go to our Unity website and download notes from the services page if you're interested. Also, we have Navigating A Course in Miracles with Reverend Ronnie and Paul Kenny. They meet every Wednesday evening by Zoom at 7 p.m. if you'd like to join them. You can email Ronnie, and her information is on our website, even if you've never come before. They have quite a good group going, I'm sure. Unity Men's Group meets at 4 p.m. every Wednesday afternoon at Starbucks on the corner of 436 and Hal Branch in Winter Park. And they also meet on the third Sunday of the month in the courtyard classroom. And Mark is kind of the coordinator for that, and his information's on our website if you'd like more info. Also, a reminder that our chaplains pray every evening at 8 p.m. So if you'd like to join us in prayer, just set a timer and hold those who need prayer in prayer. We also usually have a theme, and now it escapes me what it is. I apologize. I pray mightily. Thank you. I was thinking of December's theme, so thank you for that. And if you need prayer after service, see one of the chaplains here. I'm a chaplain. I see Bob is here. He's a chaplain, so you can come and ask for prayer for that, for you. Also, our annual membership meeting and potluck is Sunday, January 29th, following the 11 o'clock service, so we invite you to come, and you can bring, if you would, a dish to share. And Reverend Bob's lesson this morning is In Spite of Appearances, but as you know, I have to tell you a little story. So we just had Epiphany on January 6th, so this is perfect, this little story. So there was a children's church that was producing a Christmas play, and the teacher told her students that if they forgot their lines, that they should just ad-lib. And so instead of just standing there, they were encouraged to ad-lib. At the big performance, all went well until the three wise men made their entrance. And so the first one said, "Baby Jesus, here is your gold." And then, "Baby Jesus, here is your frankincense," offered the second one. The third wise man, he forgot the name of his gift. And so he stood there frozen, and the teacher whispered from the side of the stage, "Just say anything, ad lib." And the little boy peered in at the manger and looked at the baby, and he exclaimed, "Ooh, doesn't he look just like his dad?" So, there you go. I'm going to turn it back over to Brian now.
Thanks, Susan.
Yeah.
And you can't hear what her husband is saying back here, but it's pretty funny too. Here's a song that I wrote a long time ago, one of my originals. It's called Miracle in Disguise. Here I am alive again with you, breathing another breath again with you, and if you can close your eyes and let God show the miracle in disguise, you'd be wise. And if Just think of all the good that it could do for me and you.
That was wonderful. Thank you all. Susan, Carol, Tinker, John, and Brian. Let's move the cord out of the way. Good to see you all today. Good to see you all at home, or at least I'm glad you can see me. We know you're there. We have faith that you're there. That's what we're going to talk about today. Are you enjoying all this cold weather? I mean, yesterday it was so bright and sunshiny, and it went up to 70 or just above. It was a gorgeous day yesterday. Good sleeping weather when it gets cold at night. I hope we're just getting winter over early. How does 2023 feel to you? Feels good to me. Feels like there was a new sense of peace coming out of the chaos, right? New sense of some real possibilities in front of us during this year. Well, last week we set our goals. We set our spiritual goals for the year. What is it we hope to accomplish this year? I'm sure you did it whether you were here or not. You looked at it this year and you said, these are my hopes and dreams for the year ahead, right? Today we're going to talk about how we hold on to those hopes and dreams, how we make things happen. It's called In Spite of Appearances. If you're around Unity very long, you're going to hear this term. In spite of appearances, we know it'll work out. It doesn't look like it's going to work out. But in spite of appearances, we know it's going to work out. In spite of appearances, good things are going to happen. In spite of appearances is the very basis behind all prayer, everything. You aren't praying for it if it doesn't look threatening, if it doesn't look like it isn't going to happen. And you're saying, in spite of appearances, I am going to hold that something good is going to come out of this, that we're going someplace good. And we call that faith. Faith. In spite of appearances. It's going to happen. It's the way we latch on to that vision of what can be before sometimes it even seems possible. How we latch onto that vision of abundance, healing, whatever. And we say, that's going to be mine. May not look like it at the moment, but it's going to be mine. In Hebrews 11, 1 and 3, Paul writes, faith is the substance of things hoped for, as it was the substance of things which have come to pass. And it is the evidence of things not seen. And then we skip down a couple of verses, says, the things which are seen came to be from those which are not seen. which in the end is the basis of it all. So let's start with the fact that faith is the substance. He's putting reality terms in with something that seems very abstract. Faith. Faith is reality of things hoped for. It's the substance of things which have come to pass. It is the invisible processes by which the creative forces in the universe that are invisible to start with have created what does come to pass. Faith is the way we interact with the whole creative process that happens on these higher levels before it finds concrete expression in our lives. It's substance of what is hoped for. You don't just hope for it, you're putting the knowledge it will be behind it, and that gives it substance. That's faith. It's the evidence of things not seen. And then that final statement, which is the most important probably. The things which are seen come to be from those which are not seen. It is invisible before it becomes visible. It is something you know in the invisible realms. And then finally it takes form in your life. Because this is the creative process. There is an invisible process by which these energies are coming together and are drawing to them the circumstances that eventually work together to create whatever you call my life, what's happening right now. And that's always happening. I mean, if you look at quantum physics, at this point, quantum physics says that we are continually choosing among infinite possibilities. The infinite possibilities of life are out there. And as we look at life, one coalesces in front of us. And we're making that choice. The only problem is we have no idea how or what level upon which we are making that choice of the life existence that I live in. Now, that's quantum physics. Spirituality is very close. The only difference is we say you can participate consciously through a process called faith. The ability to see what's happening on an invisible level. You say, well, it isn't real if it's invisible. Tell that to Madame Curie. Radiation kills. You cannot see it. It is totally invisible. And yet, you can see its effects. Anyone who stays around radiation for very long starts to get burned. They start to have issues. Well, by the same token, anyone who through faith stays around the idea of perfect life for very long starts to see healing happen. And anyone who knows the creative forces are moving in their life and that they are working with those invisible creative forces, they will eventually see the results of this in their life. And just like we are absolutely convinced radiation will burn you, we eventually, as we demonstrate more and more through faith, learning the skill of working with this creative process, we eventually reach the point where we're absolutely convinced that, as Paul said, the things which are seen came to be from those which are not seen. Faith is seeing the higher possibility. Not what the world is presenting to you, but a higher possibility. and attaching yourself to it. It's opening up to what the spiritual energies, the invisible energies in your life can create. Now, Peter is the disciple who represents faith, but he has a brother called Andrew. And Andrew represents strength or steadfastness. Faith is the ability to see the higher possibility. Strength is the ability to hold on to that vision until it takes form in your life. In your life. I suppose the first step is to fully accept that there is an invisible creative realm that is setting up life, that is causing what we eventually see in physical reality. When we make that jump, such as people who worked with radiation had to, that there's something invisible going on here and it's real, and it has these types of effects. When we make that jump, then we begin to know we live in two worlds at the same time: the invisible world and the visible world. And what's going on invisible levels, in the end, causes what we are experiencing as we go throughout our life. Faith is how we quit being the victim of this process and start participating. Most of us are just the victims of choosing whatever reality we choose every time we look at it, if you listen to quantum physics, and having no idea why or how. Faith is attaching ourselves to a higher possibility until we draw that possibility into our lives. In Mark 11:24, Jesus said, anything you pray for and ask, believe that you will receive it, and it will be done for you. This is how we work with those unseen energies. We have our hopes and dreams, and generally hopes and dreams are followed by, but of course that can't happen, right? Daydreaming is all about wishing for something you know can't be, and it has no power. Holding your dreams is about faith, and it has power. So, when you ask for something, you have to actually believe you're going to receive it. It can happen, in spite of the fact it doesn't look like that right now. In spite of appearances, I know this can happen. Proverbs 3:5, trust in the Lord with all your heart and rely not on your own wisdom. A lot of faith is putting your trust in God because you can't see it. You can see the vision of the other possibility, and you can hold the realization it will happen, but it ain't physically looking at you at the moment. So, in the end, you wouldn't be asking for it if it was already there, right? So it isn't there, at least not physically yet. But when you create it in the invisible realms, and it becomes very real in these realms for you, when you believe this is coming, you see the process by which the dream I hold in my mind shall surely find expression in my life. You put it in God's hands. Most of the time, if you had to decide that your faith was up to it, you'd say, well, probably not. I'm not sure I'm quite there yet. And the way we move ahead is we put it in God's hands. When we put our trust in God, rather than trusting what the world says is possible. The world will always tell you what is possible. The other day we were at the vets, and I'd been in once before, and I guess I was being my assertive self because I ended up getting an appointment that she said couldn't possibly happen. She finally spoke to someone and said, okay, yeah, we can get you in tomorrow, no problem. And the cat needed to get in the next day. So when we finally went in, you know, this time it's my turn. First it was Patty, then it was me. And I got turned down, told the appointment was canceled. They had an emergency, and I said, well, then we need to be in tomorrow. And at first that was not possible. This is how the world is. It'll tell you what's not possible. But I thought, no, there's got to be a way you can fit me in, because it'll be several days beyond that if you don't. So you got to be able to fit me in. And in the end, she fit me in. Now, it was of note that Patty came in, and she's nice and not terribly assertive. And so the next time I had to take the cat in, because it depends on whether Patty's at work or not. I took the cat in, and once again, no, I can't give you a morning appointment. It has to be afternoon, 3:30. And I said, you got nothing in the morning? Because Patty really would like to come in. And she said, nope, nothing. I said, 3:30 it is, but here's the deal. You get me, not her. And she said, let me go check on something. I thought I ought to be insulted, but I was getting what I wanted, so I said, great. But life is like that. So you have to put your trust in God, that there is a possibility that something can happen, that something can open for you. Trust the higher possibility. I know there's a way you can fit me in. Over Christmas vacation, there were all kinds of things going wrong. And there were several times I stood there and I was nice as pie, but I was there. And in the end, that which couldn't be done got done. Sometimes you have to know there will be a way. It'll open up in some way. Now, in Matthew 17:20, Jesus said, if there is faith in you, even as a grain of mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, move away from here, and it will move away, and nothing will prevail over you. Remember how I said you can't trust what the world says is possible. You have to believe in miracles. You have to believe that what the world says is possible isn't the last word, that other things can happen. Miracles are possible as you use faith and trust the higher spiritual energies to create a new reality. Wow. Now, I think it's important that we look at this at the beginning of the year, because we've got a lot of hopes and dreams for the whole year. And we need to know that if we can hold this vision, and I really do have the vision that this year things are going up. We may take a little while to make the turn. It may be a wide arc, but the energy has changed. There is more peace. Possibilities are opening up that did not that were not open last year. Things are about to unfold in my life, in the lives of people around me, and hopefully in the world too, that make what last year seemed impossible quite possible this year. So, what are some examples? Because that's how you build your awareness of the invisible. You look at the results, the times that we have used faith and gotten results, and you add them up and you say, yep, there's something here. There's radiation going on. Something's happening that's invisible. That's how you, quote, build your faith. So let's talk about the different instances of people who have used faith in order to embrace a higher possibility and demonstrate it in your life. And one of the first places that we do that is in healing, right? I mean, Unity was founded on healing, any way you cut it. It was Myrtle Fillmore who had that diagnosis of terminal tuberculosis. Get your stuff together, you're going to be dead in 3 months. That type of thing. And then her having the realization, I'm a child of God. Therefore, I don't have to inherit illness. Everyone in her family had died of tuberculosis. And I inherit perfect life from my Father, and that's what I'm going to concentrate on. So she held the vision of perfect life for 2 years before she had her full healing. Now, please understand, she was supposed to die in 3 months. But 2 years later, she is completely clear. Why? Because she held that vision of God's perfect life in her body. Through thick and thin, I'm sure there were times when things started to look up, and there were times when she lost it again, because that's how it happens. There are the ups and downs as we move toward whatever it is we're seeking, whether it's healing or something else entirely. And you say, okay, well, Myrtle had her healing. Then Charles decided, if my wife can do it, I guess I can do it too. And he worked on his problems. He had a leg that was 12 inches shorter than the other one because he'd fallen in a skating accident as a child. He spent all his life working on his healing, but he got it to where he grew the leg out to where it was 1 inch shorter. He wore a double heel. That was it, instead of running around on crutches. You say, oh, these are dramatic healings, but they took place 130, 140 years ago. And just as dramatic healings are taking place in this congregation right now. Okay? This is something that is current. It's happening now. Patty's going to kill me for this. My wife and I got together. Well, let's say that we moved towards creating a relationship when she came in to ask me if I would do her funeral. She had a cancer with a particularly bad reputation. Almost everyone dies of this. But instead, we talked about healing, never talked about the funeral. And then we got together and became friends, and then went more. Thank you, John, for that laugh. And of course, as I've mentioned earlier, she's now been cancer-free for a year. But this isn't just Patty. For a while, I said, I've got a club going here, men whose wives have cancer. And every single one of them has demonstrated healing because we held to the higher possibility. The world says, these are your chances. And we say, I'm going to accept the one where I win. okay? The one where we have healing. We have someone who it has just as bad a reputation and a lot more difficulty with it, and she's gotten over hers. She is now in remission. We've had several people. In fact, when I first came to this church, someone came to me and said, I've written a book because I had 4th-stage breast cancer, and I've been healed totally. So I wrote a book about it. Now that was, almost 30 years ago? The interesting thing she said was, I had this realization that I was healed. My body did not show it. But I knew I was healed. And people would ask me, how are you doing? And I would say, I'm doing fine. What are you? And then suddenly I'd remember they think I have cancer. So does the doctor, by the way. That was the story this woman shared with me 30 years ago. And eventually, that which I knew, that vision I held, was the way everything was. That's the way faith works. But maybe it isn't healing you need. Maybe you're praying to experience more of God's abundance. That's the higher possibility you want to see in your life. In spite of appearances, you don't pray for abundance when you are overwhelmed with things in your life and you go, oh my God, I got so much, I don't know what to do with it. That's not when you pray for abundance. You pray for abundance when you look out and you go, oh, I haven't got as much as I want. I don't have what I need. And so you have to pray in spite of the appearance, right? You have to pray that God's abundance belongs to me. I'm a child of God. I'm meant to inherit the kingdom. I'm meant to have abundance. I'm meant to experience this. So, this is where you use faith to say, in spite of appearances, I know good is coming to me now. I told you over and over the story of my daughter and her ideal job that got at the last minute. She didn't get it. She couldn't understand why. Everything had come together so perfectly up to that point. And she had to know that good still lay ahead. She put out her resumes, and in the end, she got a better job. Okay? And she didn't realize how much better until the girl who got the job called her back and told her, you really dodged a bullet. That's the most toxic environment I've ever been in. I just quit. No, you have to know that in spite of the appearance of total loss, something good lies ahead. Years ago, I taught my first 4T prosperity class in Fort Pierce, in the Fort Pierce Church. And I remember it because of a number of things, but one is this one young couple that came. They were in their 30s. They rode a bicycle to class. They did not have a car. Anyway, they were, let's put it this way. I could keep track of how they were doing because we were supposed to keep track of the tithes, and this was a tithing class. Each week you tithed on what came in. And their first tithe was 48 cents. That meant that week they got $4.80. And they tithed 48 cents. By the next week, it was $1.50 something. Then it was up at 7 and 6 and 5. They were doing triple figures by the end of the class. So here they are with the entire appearance of total lack. But as they are putting their attention on God's abundance, it is growing in their lives exponentially from where they started. And so they didn't stop when the class ended, which is what we hope everyone does, and few people do. But in any case, they didn't stop when the class ended. And they kept, and dive checks grew quite large, and then they moved away and we lost track, and I talked to them later, and I found out, we continued to tithe. We continued to know that as we tithe, so will we prosper, which was the name of a pamphlet that L.E. Meyer, who is the founder of this church, wrote. They said, as we continued to do that and know that we were giving and we were going to receive even more, as we continued to hold the vision of God's abundance, well, one day somebody showed up in their life. The young man was estranged from his family. He hadn't seen them in years. They didn't know where he was. He wasn't even sure where they were. And someone showed up who knew him and just bumped into him and said, by the way, this family member of yours has died and left you $200,000, but they didn't know where you were, so in it is written that if it's not collected by such and such, if they don't find you by such and such a time, it goes to somebody else, and that time is about 30 days from now. He showed up, collected his $200,000. They started their own business. They moved up north. They did all kinds of things. And in the end, that money actually was used in part for when he got ill, for the therapy he needed to be healthy and move on with his life. All of it just kept coming. Why? Because they held the vision and they wouldn't give it up. That abundance was growing in their lives. Now, maybe you want to embrace the higher possibility of guidance, the guidance to succeed at whatever it is you're doing. Maybe you need some guidance to know what it is in life you need to do to accomplish what you want most. And here I'm going to share a story from Harold Sherman, who wrote the book, How to Make ESP Work for You. He's an older author. It's an older book. And he's telling his story from the 50s, okay, long before the internet, long before a lot of things. In either case, Harold tells the story that he had developed a rare throat disease. It was like a fungus or something on the back of his throat, and nothing would kill it. Nothing. And the doctors said, we've had only 2 or 3 cases in the entire United States. And what's going to happen, we know how this works, it responds to absolutely nothing. And how this works is that you're going to lose your voice totally. Now, he's a writer and a speaker. You're going to lose your voice, and you will probably eventually die from it. I said, okay, nobody in the U.S. seems to know because they all consulted with one another, et cetera, et cetera. They called all the people who ought to know because there was no internet. And he decided in himself, there is someone in this world who knows the cure for what I've got. And I see myself drawing to me that person who's going to tell me what I need to do to be cured. Well, he'd been holding this for quite a few months. Things had continued to degenerate. He was attending, got inspired to go to this lecture. A doctor was giving a lecture of what he'd done down in the Amazon in the rainforest. He was down there working with the indigenous tribes down there in the rainforest. And he was doing whatever he could do. And he was now back and sharing his experiences, and he really liked the guy and did something he almost never did. He invited the speaker to lunch afterwards, and the speaker accepted. And they went out. I mean, after all, Harold was a published author and someone who also was known. So they got together, they went out, and during the lunch, Harold kept having to clear his throat. Before he could go on and speak with him. And his voice was a little raspy, et cetera, et cetera. And finally, the man turned to him and said, tell me, what's going on with your throat? And he described exactly what he was going through, what he'd been told with doctors, and all that hadn't worked. And the man just silently reached in his pocket and got out something and started writing. And he thought, oh, well, it didn't make much an impression. He's going on with something else. And then he turns to him and hands him this and says, this is a combination that if you ask a pharmacist to mix it up for you and you swab your throat with it, it'll go away. And he said, what? He said, we had a whole run of this down in the Amazon. People died left and right. We tried everything until we finally came up with this combination. And it seems to work. Well, obviously, he went home. He took it out, did it. He got his healing. He was drawn to the perfect person who knew the answer he needed. That is what he'd been holding in his mind for months. And that is what then happened in life. So, all spiritual demonstration is seeing the higher possibility in spite of appearances and holding that vision until it comes to pass. So, quickly, I want to go over some ways to use faith to see the higher possibility in spite of appearances in our lives today, right now. And the first is rather obvious. We set it up last week, right? Set your goals for the year. Now, setting the goals is one thing. Seeing the possibility, that's faith. But faith fleeting is not enough. You need Andrew. You've got to hold the vision until it's fulfilled in your life. So every day we're going to image each of those goals, those hopes and dreams we have for the year ahead. We're going to image them fulfilled until it unfolds in our lives. And we're going to expect to receive. Remember Jesus' statement, whatever you ask, believe you will receive it. Okay? So, expect you will receive what you're praying for. And know that all the spiritual forces, see the invisible forces at work. Those who deal with radium and other things that create radiation, they in their minds see very clearly that there's something invisible happening around this. You need to see every single day that these spiritual forces are moving, and the creative process is right now. The invisible is creating your vision until it will eventually become visible. And you do this every day until your prayers are fulfilled. We set the goals and we fulfill them. Number 2, I'm going to hit it from the other side. These are our hopes and dreams. Let's talk about our dreams, our fears and our angers, our resentments. because they usually mean we have tuned in on something that is very deeply involved in lack. So each day, do an inventory of your fears and angers during the day. The things that are happening. Because if you reacted to something, you had a fear. And that fear means you didn't see God there. You saw the lower possibility. So, the first step is to determine in each of these experiences, what is the basic area that feels threatened? Is it financial? Is it love? Is it your success feels threatened? Health and body well-being, you're afraid your body's going to be harmed? Is it self-esteem? People won't think highly of you. Or is it just plain your happiness? I won't be happy if this happens. In either case, as soon as you have the basic area, then declare that God is your source in this area. God's the source of my happiness. God's the source of my life and well-being. God's the source of my finances. God's the source of my experience of love. And God is the source of my success. And declare that God is in charge in this area of your life until you feel secure in this area again. God is my source. I'm okay. God is my source. I'm okay. And nullify that fear. Don't let it take lodging in you. Hold the vision that God is your source and all is well in this area. Number 3 is expect miracles in your life. Expect miracles. Are you going to listen to what the world tells you is possible? Or are you going to know all things are possible with God? Right? So, it can come together. In spite of appearances, it can come together. So remember the higher spiritual creative forces that work invisibly in your life. Remember the invisible is constantly creating the visible. And I'm going to work with the invisible to change the visible. Turn it over to God. With God, all things are possible. Miracles are possible. What the world tells me has to happen, there can be another possibility. I'm sorry. We have no morning appointments. Then you get my wife, not me. Let me go check on that. No, then you get me, not my wife. That was the kicker. See the higher possibility, even though it seems unlikely, even though it would take a miracle, you are allowed to claim it. And as you do, you claim it by knowing it's already yours. We're only negotiating time. Am I going to live in God's abundance? Yes. Is it showing right now? Not so much. But we are going, that's where we're going. Am I going to be healed? Yes. Does my body show it yet? Not so much. But in spite of appearances, I know a miracle can happen. And then after you've gone over all your goals and what it is you're praying for and the miracles you're hoping for in your life, then go over your power experiences. Here we are imaging it fulfilled, and then I'm taking a few moments to remember those times when everything came together miraculously in my life to present a good result. Something happened, I really couldn't say I made that happen, but it happened anyway. It came together. Like Harold Sherman, going to listen to a lecture by someone who happened to have exactly what he needed. We've all had something that happened in our life when we realized something greater than myself was moving in my life, and I realized that God is there in my life. You've had that moment when you realize God's presence is with you. If you can remember that, you're moved into that realization that faith can be real, that the invisible world is real. And when you know it's real, you're powerful to work with it. So, number 4, in spite of appearances, know that God is leading you to your highest good, no matter what is happening. Sometimes we're not headed immediately towards what we would view as our highest good. And sometimes when we're forced to go through something, it becomes the very path that takes us to someplace wonderful. And sometimes things change and we get to go another direction. But in either case, we have to know that no matter what, I am being carried to my highest good. There is an invisible force pulling me towards God's great good. Turn your life over to God and trust that all is well. God is always leading me towards something greater. In spite of appearances, that has to be what's going on. Lindsay had to know that when the job of her dreams was yanked right out from under her. In spite of appearances, God is leading me to something greater. And in the end, she got that something greater. And so can you. In spite of appearances, God is in charge of this world. That's probably what led me to this talk in the beginning. This world has some amazing appearances right now. I have to know that in spite of any negativity and evilness that I see, God's in charge of this world. And God will carry us to a higher place. Eventually, we may have to travel a path that leads us, into hell for a heavenly cause? But we're going to end up in that heavenly cause. Trust in God, not in your own wisdom, not in what the world looks like. Trust that God is in charge. Everything eventually works out for good. It may take a while, but it eventually works out for good. And good can come out of evil. God is always in charge. So if I'm going to wrap it up, I'm going to say this. Let's look down the road of 2023, and in spite of appearances, see all the infinite possibilities for good that lie before us and our world in the year ahead. Use faith to see the invisible spiritual forces at work right now. We have to know that radiation is happening. God is in charge of my life. God is in charge of this world. Miracles unfold in the year ahead, and great good awaits all of us this year. We have to know that and hold that vision. Know that these invisible forces are real and continually creating our outer world. Then see the higher possibilities for your life and your world. And know that this is your year to claim them. Let's close our eyes. We close our eyes, we let go of everything in the outer, and we turn within. Peace, be still. And enter into the presence of God, there within you, within your heart. Peace, be still. I live, I move. I have my being within a sea of God presence, God life. And as we look out at this life that we live, we see two levels. Here from this high point, deep within, we see that level of outer expression, but we also see the inner creative energies of the universe constantly creating life. And we see that we're connected to this. And as we have faith in our hopes and our dreams, we are working with these inner creative energies. So see all the spiritual forces in the universe moving through your heart, moving through the prayers, the visions that you hold of goodness that can unfold in your life this year. And know it is being created. Know you will receive. Realize God is my source in everything that I would fear. God is my source and all is well. So in this moment, turn your life over to God, all your concerns, all your feelings of lack. Your life as a whole, turn it over to God and trust. And feel that current of spirit that is constantly carrying you higher and higher toward your highest good. Look down the road of 2023 and see the infinite possibilities for good. For you, for everyone around you, even for our world. Father, we are open and receptive, ready to receive all the good you have for us in the year ahead. Thy will be done through each and every one of us. Amen. Well, it's time for our offering. For those of you at home, the way you give your offering is you go to the home page at the end of service, you donate now, hit the donate now button, and you can use PayPal or credit card, or you can pull off our address and mail us a check, or you can call the office to arrange for regular offerings if that's easier. Even if you haven't done so before, consider supporting us, sending in something. That's why we're still here. So thank you. And for all of you who are here, we're going to take our offering in our hands. We're going to bless it along with those at home. Together, divine love through me blesses and multiplies all the good I am and have, all the good I give and receive. Thank you, God. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Bob. And that's exactly how I write my songs. I think of things in the invisible, and they come right out, just like this one, in a dream. I've seen you in a dream, awakened so alert, since I've been aware of consciousness. In a dream so serene, I live and have my being. I'm in a flow of loving consciousness. Things aren't just what they seem. In fact, they're as good as a dream. And so alert, I am still awake in consciousness. I've seen you in a dream, awakened so alert, since I've been aware of consciousness. In my dreams so serene, I live and have my being. I'm in the flow of loving consciousness. Things aren't as bad as they seem. In fact, they're as good as a dream. When I awake from my dream state, refreshed and so alert, I am still awake in consciousness. Just aren't the way they seem. They fit much better in a dream. With my eyes open, I will see. With my eyes open, I can be. With my eyes open, I am free.
Well, thank you. Yes, you had the perfect songs for today. Thank you all for making him sound good. I want to, whether you're home or whether you're out here in person, thank you for being Unity Orlando, my spiritual family. Next Sunday, I'll be speaking on Give It Your All. Give it your all. Let's all rise and radiate into the world the prayer of protection together. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. And the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. God bless you all.